All right, so international surrogacy, huh?
Hmm.
That's a big step.
It is a big step.
And it looks like your research is taking you down the path of trying to choose the right country.
Yeah.
And I can see why, I mean, the legal stuff, the logistics, all of that,
Yeah.
it can change so much from one place to the next.
Absolutely.
Well, we're here to help you sort through all of that.
It's a big decision, choosing the right country. I mean, that really is a foundational decision in this whole process because
Okay.
it's not just the legalities, you know?
Yeah,
It's also going to affect your entire experience all the way through.
absolutely. And we're looking at a pretty diverse list here, too. We've
Yeah.
got Georgia, Ukraine, Mexico, and then, of course, the U.S. and Canada, and then even Greece and Argentina.
Yeah, and right off the bat, you have to acknowledge that elephant in the room, which is the cost.
Hmm.
We're talking a range from, tens of thousands of dollars to well over $100,000, depending on where you go and the specifics of your situation.
Absolutely. So let's jump into Georgia first. Their surrogacy laws have been pretty well established for over 2 decades now,
Yeah.
which is reassuring. But, from a medical perspective, what makes Georgia stand out?
Well, beyond just having good quality health care, Georgia boasts some of the highest IVF success rates worldwide.
Wow.
And they have clinics that actually specialize in complicated cases. So, that can be a big draw for intended parents who have had struggles conceiving.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's great that they offer that level of expertise, but
Yeah.
I'm also seeing some notes here about legal restrictions in Georgia.
Right.
What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so their laws are very specific. Surrogacy is only available to married heterosexual couples,
Okay.
which obviously excludes, a large portion of potential intended parents.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. And then there's Ukraine,
Yeah.
another country with a long history of surrogacy, but I can't imagine the current situation is making things easy.
Yeah. Ukraine was a popular destination, partly because of the costs. It can be much more affordable, potentially, half the price of the U.S. in some cases.
Wow.
And legally, parental rights are very clearly established. But of course, we can't ignore the war.
Right.
It adds a whole other layer of complexity and risk that you really can't separate from the decision.
Absolutely. Staying informed about what's happening over there is crucial for anyone even considering Ukraine.
So what about Mexico? It seems to be gaining popularity, especially for people looking for a more budget-friendly option.
Yeah, I mean, Mexico's got several things going for it.
Right.
The costs can be significantly lower. We're talking, a third of U.S. prices sometimes.
Wow.
And the cultural climate is generally very welcoming to international intended parents.
Mm-hmm.
However, the legal side of things is a bit more fragmented. The regulations vary between states.
Okay, so maybe a little more work on the legal side of things in Mexico. And what about the medical care there?
Yeah, that's where you really need to do your due diligence.
Okay. While there are definitely some excellent facilities, the level of oversight and standardization, it's not quite the same as you might find in the U.S.
Got it.
So it's not necessarily a deal breaker.
Right.
But it does mean that researching the clinics and doctors thoroughly is even more important.
Absolutely. Speaking of the U.S., I imagine it's still the top choice for a lot of people, even with the higher costs.
Uh-huh.
What makes the U.S. stand out in all of this?
Well, I mean, you could argue that the U.S. offers the most legally secure and medically advanced surrogacy system, globally. The legal framework is strong. Parental rights are well protected. You have access medically to some of the most experienced professionals and the most cutting-edge technology.
Yeah.
But all of that comes at a cost.
Right, and we've talked about the financial side of it. But are there any other potential downsides to choosing the U.S.?
One thing to keep in mind is wait times. They can be longer because of the very thorough screening process that they put both surrogates and intended parents through.
Right. And that's partly because of our healthcare system too, right?
Exactly. And the insurance system here just adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Okay, now Canada has a very different approach, right?
Yeah.
They have this whole altruistic surrogacy model.
Yes.
So what does that mean for someone considering Canada?
Well, in Canada, surrogates can't actually profit.
Okay.
They can only be reimbursed for, reasonable expenses that are directly related to the pregnancy.
Interesting.
And it's really rooted in this idea of, we don't want to commodify surrogacy, which, ethically that resonates with a lot of intended parents. But the reality is it also means that there are fewer potential surrogates,
Right.
which can lead to longer wait times.
So even though Canada's system is designed to be ethical, it comes with its own kind of logistical challenges.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to the last two on our list. Greece and Argentina. Greece. It brings to mind those beautiful images like white buildings and, the ocean.
Right. Very idyllic.
But what's the reality of pursuing surrogacy there?
Well, Greece has legalized surrogacy for both married and single intended parents.
Okay.
And the cost is generally lower than in the US or Canada.
Okay.
And they do have a solid legal framework in place to protect parental rights. However, finding a surrogate can be challenging.
Really?
There just aren't that many agencies and clinics that specialize in surrogacy there.
Okay. And what about Argentina? They seem to be kind of a newer player in all of this.
They are. Argentina just recently legalized surrogacy.
So it's pretty new.
It is, yeah. And that makes it a really attractive option for a lot of people, particularly from Latin America. But the legal framework is still, it's still developing.
Right.
So it's absolutely essential to work with legal professionals who have experience specifically with Argentine law and with surrogacy.
So someone who's really up on the latest over there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone on this whirlwind tour of all these different countries.
We have.
And each one has its own unique, advantages and challenges. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
How do you recommend people kind of tackle this decision-making process?
Well, it can feel really overwhelming.
Right.
But I think it helps to just break it down into those key factors that we've been talking about.
Okay.
So first and foremost, medical care.
Right.
Absolutely do not compromise on this.
Yeah.
And, look beyond those general statements that you see everywhere about high quality.
Mm-hmm.
Really delve into the specifics, look
Yep.
at success rates, look at, what kind of specialist expertise is available, what kind of accreditations the clinics have, what technology they're using.
So really do your homework on the medical side of things.
Yeah.
And what about this whole legal maze?
Right.
Sounds like that can be pretty tricky depending on where you go.
It can. And honestly, don't rely solely on those general summaries that you find online.
Right.
International surrogacy law is complex. It's constantly changing.
Yeah.
It's crucial to actually consult with lawyers who specialize in this field.
Okay.
Ideally, ones that have experience in the specific country that you're interested in.
So really an expert in that location.
Exactly, because they can guide you through the intricacies of it all and make sure that your parental rights are protected.
Yeah, getting that legal advice seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And of course, we have to talk about cost.
Of course.
That's a major factor.
Yeah.
How do you suggest people approach that side of things?
Create a detailed budget.
Okay.
And I mean, really detailed, factor in not just the agency fees and the surrogacy fees themselves,
Right.
but also legal fees, travel expenses, potential accommodation costs while you're going through the process, and even things like translation services if you need them.
So think beyond just the initial price tag.
Yes. Think about the whole financial picture.
And then, of course, we can't forget about that kind of human element of all of this.
Right.
But the lifestyle, the safety aspects of actually being in another country during this really important time.
Absolutely. Research the current social and political climate of the place that you're thinking about going. Think about your personal safety. Think about, how comfortable you'd be culturally. Are there going to be language barriers? Are there any travel advisories in effect? Consider what it would actually be like to live there even temporarily.
Right.
And how that might impact you and your future family.
It's a lot. It's really a multifaceted decision.
It is.
But I think we've given our listeners a great place to start
I hope so.
to approach this journey with confidence.
And at the end of the day, the right country is the one that aligns with your unique priorities and circumstances.
Absolutely.
There's no one size fits all.
Right.
Thorough research and professional guidance, those are essential.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
We have.
Keep exploring. Keep asking those tough questions. And don't hesitate to reach out for support
Yes.
as you're going through all of this.
Yeah.
It's complex. It's personal.
It is.
But it can also be incredibly rewarding.
It can be.
All right. That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you in the next one.
Sounds good. Yeah.